So, the end of E3 is upon us, and it was an interesting show this year with only kind of a few standout showcases, one being from Microsoft and the other from Nintendo. And even though Nintendo's was quite good, we did not get any information about something that many suspected we would hear about either before the show or during the show. That would be the potential arrival of a new upgraded Nintendo Switch called casually the Nintendo Switch Pro, for lack of a better term right now. Reporting from Bloomberg and other sources that this would be an upgrade model of the Switch that would be able to render games in 4K while docked, have an upgraded handheld screen, among other upgrades. And the system is 5 years old now, or close to it, so it does make sense that a new model would be coming. But that original story predicted that it would likely be shown off before the show, so the software being shown during the show could kind of realize the potential of an upgraded system like that. And yet, the entire show came and went. It was never announced before the show, and Nintendo said that their games showcase would only be about games, not any hardware. That came and went also, and there was no Switch Pro announcement there either. So that leaves us in kind of a weird place where it's been previously forecast that this new system was supposed to arrive by holiday 2021, which would make sense given the kind of 5 year timeline of where we are now. But now we have a odd situation where only kind of one or two options could happen. Either they are going to announce it kind of in a special direct in the next month or two, assuming they want it to still come out for this holiday, which raises some questions about why they wouldn't have made it kind of a focus of E3, which is the biggest game show of the year. Or what I view as the more likely option that while the Switch Pro does exist in some form, like it has to, they are going to upgrade the system at some point, and the reporting about all the components being manufactured and everything starting to come together did not come out of thin air. So it is in the cards, but I do think it may be now maybe coming in 2022, either early or late in 2022, and not need to hit the holiday window. There are a few reasons for this. The main one being that the Nintendo Switch, the current model, is still selling like crazy. It is on pace to be one of the best-selling video game consoles of all time, and it is still occasionally hard to find those in stores, and come holiday, it does stand to reason that it will sell a ton of units whether or not the Switch Pro is out. The second reason is that there is a global component shortage, parts pandemic issues, parts the U.S. and China relations. It's a lot of factors, but there's a significant component shortage for a great many industries, and video game consoles in particular are lacking some parts like semiconductors that they need to kind of match scale. And this is why you're seeing a shortage of PlayStation 5s and Xbox Series X's to a certain extent as well, because they just cannot make enough of them to meet demand. So it does not make a ton of sense that you would launch a brand new console that you know is already going to sell out in the midst of a huge shortage like this, so only a scarce handful of people can actually get a hand on it. And the Switch position the way it is now, Nintendo just doesn't really need it, both in terms of sales and the fact that it doesn't seem like there are any games coming up that will kind of require the extra power of a Switch Pro. In the future, there may be Switch Pro only games, but to start at the very least, you would not imagine that they're going to be selling games that can only be run on the Switch Pro, because there are tens and tens and tens of millions of normal Switches out there, and those games would kind of have to run on those as well, like we've seen with most of the games that have come out for the new gen PlayStation and Xboxes. So it's kind of a strange situation, but the longer this goes on, and the fact that we've heard nothing about this at all over the E3 window, the further this presses on, the less likely it seems that we are getting a Switch Pro or something like it this holiday, and that is more likely to come in the future. And it's Nintendo. They could launch a system in the spring, and they have in the past, where it would still sell a ton of units then. So they are kind of less tied to the holiday release window as other people. They kind of do whatever they want, and they manage to sell out regardless. The Switch Pro will be a hit whenever they launch it, but it does make sense that they don't need it right now, and also it may not be the best idea to try and produce it right now with all the shortages going on. So it's possible we hear more about that in the next month or two, but if it does seem like if there was a time to hear about it for a launch this year, this would have been precisely that time, and yet we got through all of E3 hearing nothing about it, and so we kind of have to keep digging around and find out what's going on with it. But that's where we are now, and we'll see where we are in a few more weeks or months and see if the silence continues.